watching DeProgram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou for Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025. Thank you for joining us. We had a few technical glitches this morning, so our apologies, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for waiting for us if you're watching live. Please chime in with your questions and comments as usual on the Rumble feed and the YouTube feed. As usual, appreciate all of your support. We are currently, our effort to finance our producer, Robbie West, is currently at just over 220. I think we're just at $222, like the old TV show Room 222.
Oh, Room 222. Yeah,
great
I liked
show.
That show. Yes.
Love that show. It's like we're hip to the concerns of today's youth. So, anyway, we have a lot to talk about today, and slightly compressed schedule to talk about it because of the tech glitches. This will be a 53-minute show instead. Anyway, please support Robbie West and Robbie Aid so that we can keep him here. We're trying to get to $1,000. The URL, which unfortunately we can't put up because we had a tech glitch, is GoFundMe.com/F like Frank /DeProgram Robbie. And if you forget all that, just go to GoFundMe and search for DeProgram Robbie as one word, and you will find it. Robbie is with a Y, not with an IE at the end. Okay, so
a mistake John. I made for months.
Yeah, I made that mistake too. Okay, so lots to talk about here. Pete Hegseth is in the crosshairs at the Defense Department, and obviously the Democrats are out to get him. They want to claim a scalp, and maybe justifiably so. Meanwhile, also a lot of domestic news. We have the election results from that from that election yesterday. A disappointing night for the Democrats, although they're trying to spin it differently.
They are.
Republicans are also looking into. They are kind of suffering a dilemma going into the midterms next year about the Obamacare subsidies. There's not likely to be a deal. What does that mean for the Republicans?
Right.
If they support a deal, they might get primaried. If they don't support a deal, they might not get primaried and then lose in the general election. I really like this story about Belgium. Belgium has most of the Russian assets that are being targeted for a reparation fund for Ukraine post-war. And Belgium is saying, okay, fine, if you want us to seize these Russian assets, the rest of the EU has to be in on it with us. Otherwise, we're going to get the shit suit out of us, and we're probably going to lose. And the rest of the EU is like, sucks to be Belgian. And finally, there's this very concerning AI software. You've probably heard about it already. That basically creates fake nude photos of anyone.
It's a serious problem in schools.
Serious problem, and it's causing obviously a lot of trauma, mostly for girls and women, but not exclusively. So we'll get into that as well. And anyway, that's it. So, John, what do you want to talk about first?
Well, let's get this Tennessee special election House race out of the way. The last polls before the actual voting took place had the Republican leading 45-44. Democrats were saying that this may be the beginning of the end for Republicans, at least in the House. We didn't believe that. We said it yesterday, but the Republican ended up winning something like 51.7 to 46 point something. That is a district where the Republican normally gets about 70%. So remember, there was some redistricting that took place just in the last couple of months. They took a safe Nashville Democratic district, divided it up so that the Democrat there would lose, and then scattered those Democratic votes around to the various Republican districts, and that's not working out the way they thought it was going to work out. Now, I'm going to blow our horn again, Ted, because we said this 6 months ago. This redistricting that the Republicans are demanding is really just the 1980s districts. And so where you normally have, 100 House seats that would be competitive, in recent years, it's been more like 10 House seats that have been competitive. because they made strongly Democratic districts and strongly Republican districts. Well, now, in order to try to get rid of some of those Democrats, they're diluting Republican districts. And in a watershed election where the shit is going to hit the fan, we could see 50, 60 House seats switch hands like we saw in 2010, for example, in that anti-Obama wave, like we saw in 94 in the anti-Clinton wave.
The
We
Newt
saw
Gingrich thing.
that's right. We saw in 1980 in the anti-Carter wave, and in 74 in the anti-Nixon Watergate
Yeah,
wave.
82, the anti-Reagan wave. 74, the
Exactly.
post-Watergate. Yeah.
Exactly.
So those are
So
those are big sweeps.
that's right.
It's such an illusion though, right? Because it's just like it's statistics. It's not really representing
Right.
the way
Right.
that the American people feel.
That's right. That's right. It's not. It's not. And on the other hand, not even on the other hand, another point is look at a state like North Carolina, for example. The actual breakdown of votes is about 52-48 Republican. Yet Republicans control 80% of the House seats. And they probably should have just left well enough alone.
Well, especially since the thing that started it all was Texas, and it looks like that one is on the ropes.
Yeah,
The
in the Supreme Court.
I mean, who knows, right? So, I
Right.
mean, I'm interested in all this because it's like, look, the Republicans definitely did not, the Democrats beat the spread, right? But in
Yes.
politics, winning is winning and losing is losing, and the
That's
Democrats
it.
still lost, and that poll was mistaken, obviously.
Yeah, it was.
And so the question now is, what does each party draw out of this? I mean, my fear as a left-leaning person is that Democrats will interpret this as good news for their side. They'll say, well, look, we did better than we should have, as you pointed out, and that's not
It's
untrue, but
right.
it doesn't really get
But
them where they want to be. And on the other hand, there is this, there is the fact that I would say that the storm clouds are gathering for the Republicans next year. But the thing is, it's a hate fest, right? As we've talked about, the voters really despise both parties,
yes, they
and
do.
including their own, even the one that they vote for, they don't like them. And
That's
so,
right.
and I wonder if the politicians get that. And I think it has it has a profound effect on the way that this country is governed. That just people are voting, they hate the other side, but they don't like their
Well,
own side.
Keith Fellers, one of our viewers, has a comment that says it straight out. It doesn't matter. They're all the same shit sandwich.
Yeah,
This is a
exactly.
conversation we've had 100 times.
Hmm.
That when Dick Cheney endorses the Democratic nominee for president, that's not a brag.
No,
When Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris et al. are the eulogizers for Dick Cheney at his funeral, that's not a brag.
no.
There's something to be said for what I think is going to become the MAGA left, and I think it's going to look more, at least on some of these foreign policy issues, it's going to look more like the British Labour Party than it does today's Democratic Party.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So, all right, so let's talk about these Obamacare subsidies. So, at this, by the way, it's very clear that there's not going to be a deal on
Yeah.
extending those subsidies.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit arcane because what's happening is that the rates are going to go up more for the people on the higher end, like people who are on Medicaid are hardly going to be affected or not even affected at all by this. People who are at the very low end and getting the old pre-COVID subsidy levels are going to be pretty much okay. They may have a marginal increase, but they may not notice much. The people who are going to notice this are on the high ends of people who still qualify for government assistance. But
Yes.
people who make, say, $80,000 or $60,000 a year, who are basically working class
Yes.
or middle class. Those people are, so Republicans are really gambling, right? They think that by next year, the economy will have improved to the point that that healthcare will no longer be a significant issue. I don't think so. I don't think there's any reason
Totally
to think
agree.
that. And then, so, I mean, affordability, prices, I mean, so basically wages are still going to be stagnant or dropping by next year.
Yes.
You know, no matter what the Fed does, I mean, the fact is they're not going to juice the economy. Obamacare subsidies are going to be an issue next year, whether they like it or not. And then, of course, they're right to be concerned about being, but I don't know. What is the risk of being primaried really for someone in a deep red district like, you know, Congressman Joe Jackson supported Obamacare, like, you know, primary out Congressman Joe Jackson. I mean, that feels like a, you know, this is going to be 2026. That feels like a 2018 problem, not a 2026 problem
You
for
know,
Republicans.
I have to agree. And I'll tell you, I think the Republicans are missing a golden opportunity here. Obamacare, we're stuck with it, right? Because there aren't enough votes on one side or the other to
No.
replace and repeal, as the Republicans have long said. So I think the Republicans actually do have an opportunity to fix Obamacare, which is broken. I mean, you and I talk about this privately all the time. I've used up all my Obamacare benefits for the year, and I'm still paying $900 a month. But I've used everything up. So God forbid, in the next 3 weeks, if something happens to me, I'm screwed, and I'm going to actually go
Watch
bankrupt.
both ways before you cross the street, John.
Seriously. So I'm not alone. A lot of Americans are in this kind of situation.
Yeah.
So the Republicans have this opportunity where they control the White House and both houses of Congress. They can actually fix this thing and have a proactive issue that they can run on.
This could
And
be
it's like they're not able to do it.
This would be a Nixon goes to China moment.
Exactly. That is exactly it.
And I don't know why they don't see the opportunity there. I mean, by the way, you know, privately, the president seems to really understand this, and he seems to have understood it for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know why he can't herd his cats into doing something. I mean, he's usually very good at it.
Yeah, he is. He is. I hope he does do it. I hope he does do it. Listen, he's got one more year before the Republicans have to face the possibility that they're going to lose the House of Representatives. And so he has a year to force through legislation. I hope that he doesn't get distracted and he's able to actually fix this doggone thing.
Yeah, yeah. Robbie, we're ready for that ad whenever you want to put it up. Okay. So this is so when you were out, I mentioned that you were probably out having good news, but I didn't say what it was. I said, I just answered destined for nothing this morning. What was the good news with John Monday that you mentioned? And I said, it's not for me to say. And so it's not for me to say, and maybe it's not for you to say right now. I don't know, John.
I can't specifically say yet. I'm just, you know what I'm going to say? These beautiful people who watch the show and listen to the show and have written to the pardon attorney and who have written to the president and written to their elected representatives, they're having an impact. And so when you get a phone call from somebody saying, can you be, in my office to talk about this pardon issue, by God, you get on your best suit and you run downtown and you do.
Yeah, you do.
You do the meeting.
Yeah,
so,
you do.
So I'm going to say it's premature, but
we'll just say that.
Thank you. We're on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
My own personal conclusion is something really great is going to happen soon. I'm not exactly sure when, but I'm optimistic.
And that is
I've
great.
never been optimistic.
Yeah, no, that's true. I've not known you to be,
no,
that way. You have cause not to be optimistic, for sure. All right, let me read this ad. You've probably noticed Rumble is growing fast and it's not slowing down. They're building a real alternative to big tech that puts creators first and actually protects free speech. And now there's Rumble Premium, an easy way to upgrade your experience with Premium. You get ad-free viewing across the platform, no pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content you came for. Plus, Premium members unlock exclusive content like bonus features, bonus videos, behind-the-scenes drops, and more from your favorite creators. Right now, Rumble is offering $10 off an annual subscription. Just go to rumble.com/premium and use the promo code STUDIO at checkout. No ads, more freedom, and content you actually care about. That's the deal. So I think I do think so. That's good to hear, and we'll leave that there.
Forgive me for not being more open. I
No,
can't
you've already
be at this
said
point.
you already said a lot. I forbid you talking more
Yeah,
about this.
I can't say anymore.
It's like it's the whistleblower gene. You just like to talk. Anyway, okay, so yeah, so I mean, I think we agree that Republicans are fucking up here, right? I mean, they really don't think.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think they're
they're
missing
burning
an
themselves. They
opportunity.
could have saved their asses with this Obamacare thing. Maybe not by working with the Democrats. But
Because
maybe,
look at the same time, the Democrats have zero ideas. There are no democratic ideas on these
that's
issues.
right. So yeah, they could definitely. I mean, honestly, at this point, I feel like the system is so fucked up. The Obamacare idea just didn't. It never worked, right? There's something like 2 out of 3. Obamacare is by county, and 2 out of 3 counties in the United States have either 0 or 1 plan in the Affordable Care Act marketplace. And the whole idea was that these guys were going to compete against each other. Well, if there's no competition, literally no competition, not like not enough competition, like no competition, then the whole thing has failed. It has collapsed. And I mean, I'm a lefty. I would rather see a completely free market system without the health insurance business, where you just pay out of pocket. Then the doctors would be competing against each other.
That's right.
For lower rates.
Hey, what do you make of these new subscription services for doctors now? They've arrived here in Washington. They started in California about 1.5 years ago, and they've moved east, where you pay anywhere between $1,500 a year and $40,000 a year.
Concierge. They call it the concierge service.
Plan. That's right, which gives you the right to just walk into the doctor and say, I need an MRI or whatever. You still have to pay for all the tests and all the stuff that you get, but the $40,000 a year just gives you the right to go in and make this appointment. What about the rest of us? I go to a doctor who barely speaks English. He's Guatemalan. He's a terrific doctor. When I go into the office, I always have to stand because there aren't enough chairs for all the. I'm literally the only person speaking English. The TV is on some Telemundo or something. I would.
Informador.
I wouldn't be surprised, if next time I go in, there's a guy with a chicken sitting on his lap or something. But this is what I can afford. I'm looking for decent health care. The guy's a good doctor. He doesn't charge me a copay. He does the blood work in-house, so I don't have to pay the premium to go to the hospital and do it. It's funny. I'm like a poor person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's really what it comes down to.
Well, I mean, seriously, in this country, if you make, seriously, you could make $300,000 a year and be a poor person if you suffer a catastrophic medical event, right?
That's right.
You get cancer, you're fucked. I mean, it's like I remember being horrified when my mother in her last year, a year before she died, she fell and broke her hip. She spent a couple of days at Kettering Memorial Hospital in south of Dayton. Good hospital. I get the bill, and they were charging just for the stay $42,000 a night for the room. That's no medical care, right? And so I'm like, this is very fucked up. I guess I'm on Team Luigi Mangione here, who, by the way, was in court the other day.
Yeah. We didn't talk about
interesting. That. Yeah, we should talk about that a little bit. Anyway, the point is, what do I think about it? I think it's disgusting that a right as basic as the right to be seen by a doctor is being bifurcated into like haves and have-nots. This should be something. I mean, every other country does a better job than us. I mean, Uzbekistan, I had to see medical care there. It was a better system than ours.
Oh my God, yes.
I mean, Mexico, better system than ours. I mean, it's like, it's better. And so it should not be that way. I get why people are doing it, but it's just like, it's end times, it's end of empire bullshit. I hate it. I get why people do it. I don't blame people for working within the system as it is, because that's just reality. It's sort of like, I didn't understand why Jimmy Carter sent Amy to a public school in Washington. Like, what
Right.
for?
I
Like, don't
remember that.
experiment with your own kid, you
Right.
know. But yeah, no, I find it disgusting. I think anything that's a basic human need, education, food, shelter, healthcare, transportation, those should all be highly subsidized, if not provided for free by the government.
Ted, last last summer, was it last summer or the summer before? It was the summer before this past summer. My son, my third son, was hit by a drugged driver. He was wasted on heroin, and just my son was parked in his car with the engine off. The guy just
I had a thing like that once.
slammed right into him.
The guy claimed it was my fault. I'm in the car, parked, engine off, in my spot. he
Well,
claimed
my
it was
son,
my fault.
he hit my son so hard he broke his back.
Jesus.
And he was a nationally ranked rower. He was on a full rowing scholarship at Miami University of Ohio. He had to go to the hospital for back surgery. He's got a wicked scar. He'll never row again. Lost his scholarship. He'll never play golf again. He can't twist his body like that.
Nice to
But
see the
we're-
empathy that the university had there.
Yeah, seriously. You either perform or you don't get paid.
Yeah.
And so his bills are hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, the guy's insurance only goes up to $300,000.
Mm.
So we may be shit out of luck on the rest of it. You know, everybody's saying, "Oh, no problem. You just sue the guy." The guy's 57 years old and lives in his parents' basement. Seriously.
Yeah, he's judgment proof.
7 DUIs. He's judgment proof. Okay, we
Yeah,
sue
that's
him.
the kind of shit that, like, that's where my inner Republican comes out. Like, 7 DUIs, like, why is he even, like, outside?
That's right.
He should be warming the inside of a prison cell.
Exactly right. 7 DUIs. Lives in his parents' basement and works at his parents' nursery for minimum wage. So yeah, this is going to be bad.
FUSO, $1. Thank you very much. As a free pardoned man, what will be your first firearm purchase?
Yeah, I wrote a response. It's going to be a Desert Eagle 9mm, which I can't wait to buy, and a Remington pump action 12-gauge shotgun.
So Robbie's recommending the Jericho 940-140.
Jericho 940-140.
Okay.
Oh, I'll check it out. And let me say here, John, why aren't you with Panquake anymore? Because I don't trust Panquake anymore. I was with Panquake for years. 5 years? And it took me 5 years to come to the conclusion that they're not serious. They're just simply not serious. And they put out what they asked me to read a press release one time where I was supposed to say that the beta of Panquake was released to a rapturous response. And I said, I'm not going to read this. And they said, yeah, you have to read it. This is what we all approved. And I said, you're comparing the release of your beta, which is fake, by the way, to the rapture. I said, no, I'm not going to fucking read this. No. And then we decided to part ways a couple of months ago in less than friendly terms. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I don't like them. I don't trust them. I don't believe in them. And I don't believe that they have a product.
Keith Fellers says he knows a guy who has 12 DUIs and still drives and hangs out at a
Oh my God.
I had a dude.
Oh my God.
So I used to drive a cab, as you know, in the 80s in New York. And I'm coming off the Queensboro Bridge, and this guy in a sports car comes probably driving 100, 120 miles an hour, takes a turn under the bridge, through the parking lot, and then basically I T-bone him because I'm just going straight. I take off the back half of his car. It was a sports car. Literally, he's got 2 wheels left. Fortunately for him, he's front wheel drive. He tries to drive off he just has the front seat and him. And he tries to drive off. He tries to escape with, he's now driving a bicycle. But he doesn't get far, obviously.
Oh my God.
So fucking drunk. he's literally, he gets out, he's literally falls down. Not from the accident, he just can't walk because he's so drunk. So anyway, the cops come, and they're all like looking at each other, like with, when people have those knowing expressions. And so he looks at me. So finally, we fill all the paperwork, and blah 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 blah. I go back to talk to my taxi owner, and he goes, "Oh yeah, so I had quite a conversation with the police. That guy is the local police precinct captain's
Oh
son,
no!
and
You
he
see,
does this all the time.
fix
And
is
he's
in.
going to walk, and they told me I just have to put in for the insurance, that they'll fight me tooth and nail." And I'm like, I'm just driving. I'm going 30 miles an hour. The dude, I mean, it's like, it's obvious what happened. Anyone could see. Anyway, yeah. I mean, it's a blight.
I have a cousin to whom I'm very close. We were born like 11 months apart. And she, God bless her, I love her very much. She has 11 DUIs. And the 11th DUI was actually, it made the CNN ticker one morning.
Oh God.
And I called her brother and I said, Pete, your sister's on the
She's on
the
national
CNN
news.
ticker.
She's on the cryon.
Because first day of school, she took her 6-year-old to school, drunk, dropped him off drunk at 8 o'clock in the morning. Some parents tried to stop her, and she hit 6 cars trying to get away and ended up getting stuck in mud on the school's football field. So I said, CNN said it's her 11th DUI. And he said, yeah, this year maybe.
What?
And I said, is it that bad? Well, she ended up going to prison for 12 months.
Probably good for her.
The judge sentenced her to 12 months in prison, not a year and a day, because a year and a day qualifies you for a time off for good behavior. If you get a year, you have to do the whole year. That is what finally straightened her out.
She probably had quite the DTs.
Yeah. Oh boy, like enough to practically kill you. But sometimes you gotta be tough. DUIs, people don't realize how serious DUIs are.
Yeah.
Like you take so many lives in your hands.
Yeah.
They've got to be stopped.
I mean, that's 100% true. Also, we should make treatment much more available. It shouldn't just be AA. And also, I mean, in rural areas, there's no mass transit, right? So like people go to a bar.
That's a good point.
They got to drive home. I mean, there should be programs where, there are some towns that have like people volunteer to be like the taxi service to bring the drunks home.
Right.
I wouldn't want the puke in my car, which is why I would never do it. But it seems like it's God's work.
Ray C 2020, real quickly. I would have thought it was county time as well. It wasn't county time. They sent her to the Florida Women's Penitentiary. And I'll tell you what, man, 12 months in a maximum security penitentiary for drunk driving, that's going to scare you straight.
I can't even imagine. I mean, honestly, like if I had a DUI one time, I would never,
that would be enough for
ever
me.
get behind the wheel of a car having had a drop of alcohol again.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it really fucks you up. It's very bad for your record. Your rates go sky high. You may not be able to drive for like a year. It's expensive. I don't know. It's just amazing to me how people don't learn their lesson.
Amen.
Well, it's an addiction.
It is.
So you want to talk about the Russians and the Belgians?
Yeah, she's in Florida. Yeah, let's talk about the Russians and Belgians. To tell you the truth, this is not an issue that I would have thought of. But when you pointed it out to me, I looked into it, and man, the Belgians have a serious point here. They're going to be the lonely man out there.
They're holding the bag. So basically, there's this whole idea, and I want to John, I want to get your thoughts. I mean, you're like me; we both love history. So reparations got a really bad name after World War I, right? With the Treaty of Versailles and Germany. I mean, people have to understand, in a way, right? What really happened the cliche is they think that during the Weimar Republic, hyperinflation was caused because the German economy collapsed, because the Germans paid the French so much money that basically their economy collapsed. That's not what happened, actually, at all. So what really happened is that the Germans decided to cheat the French. and create hyperinflation to pay them. They printed a bunch of Reichmarks to pay the French their reparations in deflated Reichmarks, right? It's like, you owe me 10 billion Reichmark. Oh, you want 10 billion Reichmarks? I'll give you 10 billion Reichmark. Print, 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 print. And then we'll deal with the inflationary effect later. So, but still, it is true that indirectly, the reparations, and so it's a lot. The cliche in the history books for 100 years has been reparations have bad problems, cause bad problems. In this case, it led indirectly or directly to the rise of Nazism in Germany in the late 20s and early 30s. So we're never going to do that again, right? I
Right.
thought we all kind of agreed to that as a world, and now the EU, the place that you would think that they would remember this lesson the most, is like, we're going to have Russia pay reparations for invading Ukraine. Now, by the way reparations used to work in the 19th century, which is the height of the reparations time, was the losing party paid the reparations. Well, Russia's not the losing party here, okay?
Right.
I mean, just because this is like a lot of the Europeans don't like Russia, it doesn't make them the losing party. They're the winning party. So they're saying, okay, we want to see. So Russia had deposits in various forms in European banks, mostly in Belgium, and they're saying, we want to take that money and give it to the Ukis, because that money will be well used. They don't have a corruption problem there, and the Ukrainians will use it to rebuild their country. And Belgium's saying, fine, we're on board with that, but all the other European countries who also have Russian assets have to do it too, and they haven't agreed to do that. And you have to indemnify us. You have to help us pay our legal expenses. All for one for all. And if the Russians sue us and win their money back, you have to help us pay it back. The Europeans are like, no, we don't really want to do that. You guys do that. You and your hazy beer and your waffles. You guys go do that. And your weird fake country created after the Napoleonic Wars. They're just not gonna. They're not gonna help the Belgians. I think the Belgians are not going to go along with this.
I think so too. And I'll tell you what, if I were Vladimir Putin, I would be on the phone today to Donald Trump saying, if you want a peace deal, you're going to call the Belgians and kill this right now.
That's a good idea. Yeah, well, we should
do.
talk about this. I mean, because that is what this is ultimately about. So there was, so the word, as usual in corporate media, is like, oh, the Russians aren't really serious about peace. They didn't agree to everything in the current sort of European inflected version of the. I don't want to say peace deal. A deal is once it happens.
Right.
Let's just
sure.
say the stance of the Western allies. So basically, Putin wants. So basically, the Europeans are back at, Ukraine can join NATO in the future. That's the red line for the Russians, and they are basically like and there's a couple of other points that are just kind of like really hard for the Europeans to accept. For the Russians to accept, like full militarization. The Europeans want to have European EU troops in Ukraine. And I mean, come on, you can't expect the Russians
What's
to
the difference? No. What's the difference between an EU troop and a NATO troop? Seriously.
None. It's the same thing.
None. Yeah.
They're literally the same people.
I still think this whole notion of Ukraine in NATO is a red herring. Because
I love this comment, by the way. Sneaker Dad says, if Belgians do anything, they should pay reparations to the Congo.
Yeah,
Fuck
you got
yes,
that
that's
right.
true.
Got that right. But literally all the United States would have to do, as I've said before, is to declare Ukraine a major non-NATO ally, which is a thing. That's what Australia is, and South Korea and Japan, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, major non-NATO ally. You get exactly the same protections that you would get as a NATO member, and you're not in NATO. So what's the beef here? I don't see it.
That's the way. Yeah, that is the way. Are we going to get to a deal? Because it's like, sometimes it seems like we're so close to like yesterday. We were so close we could taste it.
Yeah.
Not so much today.
No, not so much today. It's funny how these things ebb and flow. It's ebbing right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
and it's because there's no sense of immediacy on the ground. You know, I told you last week, or maybe it was the week before. Um, Dr. Peter Kuznick, who's a professor emeritus at American University, an expert on Russia, et cetera, et cetera. He had a dinner at his house a couple of weekends ago, and a lot of the American University and Georgetown University Russia professors were at this dinner, and they are unanimous that the Russians are winning on the ground. The thing can't go on much longer because the Ukrainians just don't have enough people to conscript to send into combat. The Russians can wait them out and then get the most favorable deal. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that.
The spin is strong. I was listening to NPR this morning, and someone there claimed that, you might have heard this morning, that Russia loses 25,000 men a month in Ukraine. I call bullshit on that.
Not a chance.
I mean, consider that we lost 48,000 in all of the Vietnam War in combat, right? 58,000 total when you include 10,000 non-combat deaths. A lot of people had car accidents in Vietnam. Like,
Yeah.
the roads were terrible.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
So, yeah, that's sort of like the Gulf War, right? There were weren't there like 4 guys who like drove forklifts off docks and died that way?
And died.
It's like,
Absolutely right.
it's so crazy. War is insane. So, by the way, just a comment here. Tammy Landgren said, I was around yesterday and heard Ted get on everyone about spelling. Not everyone, one particular person. I spit my tea. If you use Chrome, it underlines the misspelled words and will correct for you. Just a wee tip for Ted's sake. Yeah, because if we're reading the quotes, it's not like I'm being snotty about the read. If you misspell in a way that I can still read it, phonetically, like, that's fine. I just have to be able to read it.
Yes.
Okay.
I've got a question from Antigone. Can you talk about CIA involvement with writing
I love
in
this
films?
question.
The animation industry has CIA relatives working on screenplays and story adjustments, but it's through family member artists. I think almost no Americans understand the depth of CIA involvement in Hollywood film production. Yes, it's true that there are family members of CIA officers deeply involved in filmmaking and including in animation. But it's gotten to the point where the CIA now is much like what the FBI was starting in the 1950s onward. That if you want to make a movie that has anything at all to do with the CIA and you want even the vaguest CIA approval or involvement, it's going to be a pro-CIA film. To the point where the CIA's Office of Public Affairs now has a dedicated branch whose job it is to liaise with Hollywood studios. And I have to be careful the way I say this. There is a unit in the field whose job it is to work with Hollywood studios. That's why we end up getting movies like Zero Dark 30 that are just based on 100% lies that end up becoming big blockbusters. You're not going to see, or Argo, which wins the Academy Award for Best Picture. You're not going to see an anti-CIA film that gains any traction in Hollywood.
And of course, obviously, the military branches do the same thing, right? Like, obviously, Top Gun is like U.S. Air Force war porn.
In fact, those were real planes. The movie was filmed inside the planes. Professional, Air Force pilots. Tom Cruise said that he fainted at one point while they were filming, which is what you're expected to do. A normal human body
from the G-forces. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Hey, thanks a lot, MT16N7 for the $20. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Mike in Nottingham. Has the quality of politicians on the left in the U.S. always been poor? I love this question.
No, that's a great question.
Is this generation uniquely rubbish? Good luck and fingers crossed for the other day, John.
Thank you. This is kind of a complaint of mine. during the days when I was a Democrat, which seemed like a lifetime ago, I could genuinely look up to people like Senator Frank Church, Senator George McGovern, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, Congressman and Speaker Tip O'Neill. These were like intellectual giants who at the same time would routinely, regularly work with Republicans on issues on which they knew they could agree, or at least come to some sort of a middle road. And we just don't have people like that anymore in today's Democratic Party.
Well, and so
I don't believe it.
when Mike asks about the left, I naturally think of the real left, right?
The real left, which doesn't
but
exist on
it
Capitol
doesn't.
Hill.
But I mean, look, this country, as John, you and I both well known, we had a real socialist party, and this
Yes, we
here
did.
be Eugene Debs, right? Eugene Debs ran for president of the United States 4 times.
One
Most
of my
recently
heroes.
from behind bars in 1920 for opposing World War I. And the Socialist Party was a real force in American politics. They on the national level and in presidential elections, they'd get like high single figures, like 8% of the vote, which in this country is a big deal
That's a
considering
lot.
the hegemony of the two-party system.
Correct.
And but also the Socialist Party elected mayors and other local officials all over the country. They called them sewer socialists, right? Zoran Mamdani is being compared, like, hopefully, to sewer socialists. They're not called that because they were dirty. They were called that because they were people who were successful and popular by concentrating on the everyday needs of the working class and including the infrastructure of sewage, which
That's right.
was hugely important. Like
Yeah,
100,
believe it or not, was not a given back in those days.
yeah, like 140 years ago, 120 years ago, cities like New York had dirt roads. They had horses full of horse shit. Like John, I don't know if you know that, you probably do know this, but the reason that department stores like Macy's and Bloomingdale's, they have the perfume department at the front of the store is because the front opening of the store smelled like shit. And literally they used the perfume, like the smell of the perfume, to
Oh my
block
God.
that smell when you walked in.
That makes
It's not that
perfect
perfume
sense.
is so it's a legacy thing. And
That
so
makes perfect sense.
and even shit like burying electrical wires. Like San Francisco didn't do that, and it's kind of ugly. There's wires all over the place. New York did that, and it does make it's easier on the eyes. So these were socialist issues. And like you think about like a George McGovern, who wrote the introduction to one of my books, ran for president very unsuccessfully in 1972. But think about it. Now, there's a candidate you would die for today, right? He called it socialized medicine, and he was a World War II fighter pilot, right?
Yes, he was.
So he was a badass motherfucker and a good lefty.
Yes, he was.
We need more like that.
I was very proud to introduce George McGovern when he announced his candidacy for president in 1984, and then I
worked for that campaign.
I was the head of youth for McGovern. Went from college campus to college campus. My parents were so supportive. They told me that if Senator McGovern asked me to take the year off, that they would agree that I should take the year off. And then he ended up dropping out, unfortunately. But he won a handful of delegates, against Mondale, and he did it just so that he could go out on, Nightline or Good Morning America or whatever and talk about these issues that were important to progressives. I loved the guy. I really did. I really did.
Yeah, I remember when I had pitched him to write the intro to my book, and he called me, and I see his name on caller ID. It was like God calling.
Yeah.
It's like,
Ted, the first time he ever called me, I thought it was a friend of mine joking.
Right.
And I said, "Yeah, nice try, Tom." He said, "No, this is George McGovern." And I sat up in my bed like, "Oh my God."
Totally.
And then the day he announced his candidacy, Mrs. McGovern came up to me and she says, "Would you like to come back to the apartment for a tuna sandwich?" I said, "I would love to."
Yeah,
she was lovely. Her twin sister was married to John Glenn.
Oh, that's esoteric. No, I had no idea. All right, let me. That's funny. All right, let me read another ad. Looking for smarter ways to browse and enjoy your favorite content without ads? Get the Perplexity Pro Bundle with Rumble Premium for just $19.99 a month when you sign up before December 31st. Normally a $29.99 value. With Rumble Premium, you'll get an ad-free viewing experience across all your devices and access to exclusive premium content. No interruptions, just the video and the streams you love anytime, anywhere. Plus, Perplexity Pro, say that 10 times fast, boosts your productivity with unlimited research, unlimited uploads, exclusive member perks, and access to the latest and most advanced AI models for faster, smarter answers every day. Save over 30% on this powerful bundle. Head to rumble.com/premium before December 31st to sign up and unlock your premium experience. Yeah,
I will say, if you don't mind my adding my own 2 cents here. I went on Rogan and I was complaining about ChatGPT, and he said, "Oh, we use Perplexity, and Perplexity is one of our sponsors." I hadn't heard of Perplexity. The CEO of Perplexity saw that episode of Rogan and emailed me that night and gave me a free lifetime subscription to Perplexity. I have been using Perplexity exclusively, and it is fantastic.
Really?
I will never go back to ChatGPT.
Well, as you know, my name is blocked on ChatGPT, and I'm blocked at the IP level from even logging on.
Ridiculous. Outrageous.
Just because I've made fun of Sam Altman.
There's
a whole long list of people that they do this to. And I mean, honestly, I don't think you can trust a company that would do that to anybody.
No.
So I'm going to check out Perplexity for sure. All right, that's good to know. Anyway, the drunk raccoon.
I saw that in the paper. That was actually pretty funny.
Yeah, so a liquor store in Virginia was broken into. It turned out, and then they found a raccoon had gotten into the store and into the booze and was actually drunk.
Ted, I saw a thing on the news about raccoons the other day. Scientists are saying that raccoons' ears are getting longer and their facial features are getting softer because they're self-domesticating.
Yes.
And that someday we're going to have pet raccoons.
Domestication is, it's really fascinating, right? Because this gives us insight onto like how cats and dogs came to live with us. Interestingly, cats have not really changed that much. We learned recently in 10,000 years, but dogs, as you know, obviously have changed enormously. Obviously, it's like we've adapted to the cats. But do you know that? Are you familiar with that Soviet/Russian fox breeding experiment? There's this crazy scientist during the Soviet Union. I believe this started in the 60s. He started breeding foxes to see if they could be domesticated, and basically, he selected for tameness. So generation after generation, they're selecting those that like deal with human beings better, and their physical features changed as over time. Their tails became like more tightly curled and smaller. Their ears got like droopy instead of pointy, and then later they started to let's see if we can do this the other way and de-domesticate and select for aggression. And then the tail got puffy again, and the ears grew back out. I mean, pigs are like that, right? Like if a wild boar is domesticated, eventually its hair, you can breed them, and their hair falls out. They lose their tusks, that whole thing, and vice versa. They go back and forth. Like that's why pigs have a curly tail, and they're pink, and they obviously we all know what pigs look like. But wild boars are the same exact animal, right? And they genetically, there's no difference, except on a very surface level. So the physical manifestation of domestication is fascinating.
Is that why? Does that account for these wild pigs that we see in Texas and in Florida, where they have pig shoots where you can go out and just kill? Are those formerly domesticated?
A lot
pigs?
of them, yeah, for sure.
What in the world?
Yeah, and then there's in one lifetime, like cats are different because cats can go feral and domesticated over and over and over. They can live with people, go live outside, come back. They're the only animal that we know that can do that.
Yeah.
No, but the raccoon thing is fascinating. It's like they're becoming like they're learning how to make us like them. We got to talk about something that is not likable, and I'm glad actually we don't have that much time to talk about it, to be honest, because it's so disturbing. But people need to be aware of this deepfake nudifying software problem. And the reason they need to be aware of it is because if you have a kid in school, your kid could either be using this shit against girls, or could be a girl being
And,
victimized by
and
it,
it's a
and they need
felony,
to
by the
know
way.
about it.
It's a felony, by the way, and they will charge teenagers with that felony. You can't do stuff like this, but it's hard to control.
Well, I think it's impossible. I mean, I would like to sort of hope that Clay Shirky, the futurist from NYU, famously said, in the future, everyone will have a nude photo on the internet. And what he was trying to get at is it will not matter if we're all in the same boat. It's like going to a nude beach. If everyone's nude, it doesn't matter. But like, I think the whole point here is you got to teach your kid, like, if this happens to you, I mean, kids have committed suicide. They need
Yes.
to be, you need to really explain, like, you're not a bad person. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing shameful about it. It's bullshit. And, like, obviously it's completely unacceptable behavior. But I do think a cell phone ban would go a long way because they're
I
passed around in
agree.
school. That's where this happens.
I agree. I agree. Yes, this is dangerous, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. Yeah, and we all warn our kids. I have a very good friend who started warning his kids when they were little, like prepubescent. You never, ever, ever take a nude picture of yourself, and if God forbid you do, you never send it to someone on the internet. And sure enough, as soon as his daughter turned 14, she took a topless picture of herself and sent it to some boy that she fancied at school. Next thing you know, it spread like wildfire. And once it's out there forever.
Yeah, no, totally. And I mean, like, people have to learn not to do it, but also it's like the fact is you got to prepare, especially your daughter, like, this might happen to you.
Yeah.
And here's what you got to do if it does. I mean, and it's not about you. I think when kids are prepared for the possibility, their brain, it snaps. It's just like for anybody, right? Like, it
Yes.
snaps into your brain, like, oh, this is that situation my dad or my mom warned me about, and that's 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 what this
Okay,
is.
I just went onto a private screen and I typed in John Kiriakou nude photos. And thank God there's nothing out there.
By the way, according to Chat GPT, John, you will love this.
Uh-oh.
Shows you as a Turkish citizen.
What?
Yeah,
These
I
bastards.
know how you love the
I
Turks. So
freaking hate ChatGPT so much.
I,
Thanks for that. I'm gonna track that down.
honestly,
Bastards.
I'm not even kidding. It has crossed my mind. What we need is a fucking class action suit against ChatGPT.
Yeah, we
If
do.
all the people who are being fucked over by them sued them, we could get together and do something. But you'd need, like, if anyone's listening and you're like ACLU or better yet EFF or something like that, let's do something. I mean, honestly, I don't care about making money. I just want to make these fuckers stop. You know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I want to add something. I just saw it here a second ago where they said, here it is, Glass and Candy. AI generated child pornography is still child pornography. The courts have
Yes.
made exceedingly clear about this and will prosecute no matter what age you are. And that is a first time offense, mandatory minimum 5 years in prison in the federal system.
Even possession of your own photo, if you're a child, is child pornography,
That
and you
is
can
exactly
go
right.
to prison. So it's very, very, like, not something to fuck with at all.
That's right. Can't
Um,
do it.
yeah,
Shouldn't
you
do it.
just. I mean, yeah. I think part of the problem with this law is that a lot of people aren't aware of it, and
That's
there
right.
should be. Honestly, we need a PR campaign. Um,
Indeed.
all right, John. Always a pleasure. Sorry about the late start this morning.
Good. Yeah,
Hopefully
sorry
that
about
wasn't.
that.
I think there was a StreamYard glitch. I think that's what that
Yeah.
was. Anyway, we will hopefully be back with our usual production values, but it didn't stop today didn't hurt our numbers any. We're here Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Time as usual. Please stay tuned to the TMI show with me, Ted Rall, and Manila Chan on the Rumble feed coming right up. It's also going to be on YouTube, I think. All right. Bye,
Good.
guys.
Thanks, everybody.
I guess we're we're still
Awesome.
live here. I think Robbie has to do the. I can click